I might have been living like a star, hanging out with famous people and going to all the smartest parties, but I certainly didn't feel like a star as far as my bank balance was concerned. Now, I'm not going to deny that I'd win a gold medal if shopping was an Olympic sport, but after 2 years in EastEnders, I still found it strange that I didn't seem to have 2 pennies to rub together. I was certainly doing all right for a 20-year-old, but I couldn't help noticing that many of my fellow EastEnders appeared to be substantially better off than me. Howard Anthony had a BMW convertible. Dean Gaffney drove a brand new Vauxhall Tigra, so why was I having problems paying for a Fiat Punto? I decided to look a little deeper. Uncle Lawrence recommended that I pay a visit to his accountant, called Tony Margatelli. I never needed an accountant before because I'd never really earned any money. Tony agreed to write to my agent Mark Devine and see if he could clear the matter up. He wrote quite a few letters, but he never got any replies. So he suggested we contact the BBC and get them to pay my EastEnders money directly to him and pass on Mark's 10% after that. The BBC operates a very sensible system, attaching a brief statement to each cheque detailing its amount, what it was for, and what date the episode was broadcast. Tony looked it all over and decided it was time to pay Mark Devine a visit. Tony explained who he was and asked to cast his eye over Mark's books. Freaked out by the surprise visit, Mark nevertheless agreed. It turned out Mark's bookkeeping was hopeless, and Tony thought the time had come to part company. We spoke to Equity, the Actors' Union, and to the Department of Trade and Industry, who agreed to take on the case on our behalf, and they brought a prosecution for which a trial was held in March 1997. It turns out that Mark had contravened the laws governing the conduct of employment agencies and pleaded guilty to all 11 charges brought against him. One of my chief problems was the house I bought in Brentwood the previous year. I bought it thinking it would be a home for me and Gareth, and I'd spent a fortune doing it up, but by then there was only me and I was struggling to meet all the bills. The solution was to buy a little pied-à-terre in London, just as my screen heroine Holly Golightly did in Breakfast at Tiffany's. I found just what I was looking for in Westbourne Terrace. With no agent and no money, I turned to my friend Barbara Windsor for advice. She's been in this game longer than anyone, I thought to myself. At least she must know an agent who will send me my money when it's due. That was in the winter of 1996, about 4 months before we finally got Mark Devine in court. I told Barbara what had happened and she put me on to her own agent, Barry Burnett. I sensed he was more a theatrical agent than a telly or music business expert, which ultimately meant we were only to work together for a relatively short time, as I made no secret of my ambition to get into music and movies. Barry was approached by a guy called Kevin Wood, a very straightforward businessman who was interested in casting me for a panto he was staging at the Marlow Theatre in Canterbury. He wanted me to play the part of Cinderella, the girl who shoots from rags to riches thanks to a fairy godmother. Perfect. First I had to get clearance from the BBC. Everyone on Enders used to take it in turns to do a panto or some other project once in a while, and I needed the money badly. I was well paid for 6 weeks' work, but after commission to your agent and 40% to the Inland Revenue, a lot of it disappears. The scriptwriters at Enders were sending Tiff off for a holiday in Marbella. A good idea as she needed the break. In real life, I got stuck into the panto rehearsals and started searching for somewhere to stay. I ended up in a cottage in the middle of nowhere, which I shared with my friend John Pickard, who was playing buttons. Cinders was hard work, no two ways about that, as we were doing as many as 3 shows a day. I loved it all the same. I had a gorgeous pink Zandra Rhodes ball gown, sprinkled with diamante baubles, the most over-the-top fairy tale dress ever. The kids loved it almost as much as I did. Sometimes on that stage I felt like I was a 5-year-old again, dressing up in mum's clothes. But after the first week, disaster struck. My voice started going. At the end of the matinee I felt lousy, feverish. My makeup was running all over my face because I'd started sweating too. That evening, my voice was still awful and I felt worse as the show went on. I had this burning feeling in my head and couldn't breathe. The next thing anyone knew, I'd hit the deck and collapsed. After a week, Kevin was desperate for me to take to the stage again, even if I couldn't sing solos and could only croak my lines. In fact, I felt well enough to go to a New Year's Eve party. It was a wild night, all right, but I couldn't get into the swing of it, no doubt because I was battling pneumonia. The split from Gareth was still weighing heavily on my mind, and I had to contend with everyone else at the party snogging their partners. I wanted someone to snog too. This bloke kept looking at me. "Hello," he said. "I'm Jonathan Barnum. I just wanted to say hello. I'm not clear on your name, as everyone keeps calling you different things, so I thought I'd introduce myself and find out. I suppose the reason we became good friends dizzyingly quickly was because he didn't really have a clue who I was. He had only been in the UK for 6 months as he'd lived in Spain from the age of 9. Like me, he'd been to a stage school, Corona, and now returned to the UK to kickstart a career in the business. I admit even then I thought Jonathan was nice, and I told his cousin Sarah, who was at the same party, just that. Sarah and I got on so well, we ended up swapping numbers with the intention of going out for a natter sometime. The panto wound up in the middle of January. I cleared out the cottage and drove back to London ready to start work at EastEnders the following Monday. Despite the fact I was still feeling a bit groggy and increasingly depressed, the irony was everyone said how well I looked. I'd lost loads of weight and none of Tiff's clothes fitted me properly anymore, especially she was about 8 months pregnant by the time I returned. I might have been thin, but I felt terrible. I felt like I was just going through the motions and felt increasingly numb and isolated from what was going on. Looking back now, I believe that all the events of the previous 7 months had started to take their toll, and I began to slip into a depressive state. Those close to me at Elstree noticed something was up. I'd finish the scene, go back to my dressing room, have a cry, and then go back and film another scene. I was finding it difficult to cope with life on my own. I didn't know what was going on, who I was, what I was doing, and why Gareth wasn't with me. All around me, people seemed to be taking money from me, selling horrible stories to newspapers, betraying me. I realised I had all these people clinging on to me, who were out for what they could get while I was riding this crest of a wave. The next 6 months passed in a blur. Nothing went on in my private life, and work was just, well, work. Tiff was still the public's East End darling. Her baby Courtney was born in March, followed by a DNA test which established Grant, not Tony Hills, as the father, which was just as well because Grant and I had married the previous November. Did I say nothing much was happening in my private life? Well, that isn't quite true. I got a call from Sarah and we arranged to meet at the Bluebird restaurant. Maybe I was a little slow off the mark, but I didn't think anything of it when midway through dinner, Sarah's phone rang. It was her cousin Jonathan, allegedly at loose end. He popped by about 20 minutes later and ended up staying until we left gone midnight. He is very polite, not at all pushy, and offered me a lift home to Westbourne Terrace. From then on, we became firm friends, and there wasn't a hint of romance, certainly not on my part. It was another 5 months before Jonathan came clean about his own feelings. We went to the Hanover Grand off Regent Street for my 21st birthday. I was dolled up to the nines, wearing a little black sequin boob tube and satin trousers, and I felt the bee's knees. Do you know what, he said? I could fall in love with you, but I'm not going to, because you're not good for me at the moment. You're a bit mixed up, you're a bit here, there and everywhere, but when the time's right, I'm going to give it a go. I sat there in shock for a couple of seconds. Oh, will you now? Will you really? He smiled. Yeah, I will. Just you watch. Not once did I consider Jonathan as a potential boyfriend. I was very much disillusioned with dating and was genuinely looking forward to spending a girly fortnight with Patsy. We decided to go to a very upmarket resort called Las Dunas, a few miles outside of Marbella. The record producer Nellie Hooper, who knows just about everyone in the music business, had recommended it. For the first few days it was great fun, and it was hilarious watching the British tourists who couldn't believe they'd seen Tiff and Bianca sipping cocktails in a Spanish bar. One evening, I woke up to find Patsy leaning right over me. Martine, she said anxiously, are you all right? You've been asleep for the last 24 hours. I've been trying to wake you up. I assured her that I felt fine and made an effort to be a bit more fun and agreed to go to a club with the hair colourist James Galvin, Daniel's son. The three of us decided to check out the fabulous Olivia Valere Club. We had a very strange evening right from the start. I can remember Princess Diana's former lover James Hewitt, who was subsequently branded the world's biggest love rat, coming over to say hello. Part of me thought I didn't want to talk to him, as he seemed to have been behaving despicably after their affair had become public knowledge. The other part of me thought I should make my own mind up, so I said hello back. He was nothing but a gentleman in terms of the way he behaved to me and Pats. The night was full of promise. The trouble was, I just couldn't pull myself together. Eventually I could push myself no further, and I told Patsy I was heading back to the hotel. I'm just so tired, I said. I can't seem to get over it. I went straight to sleep almost as soon as I hit the mattress and was miles away when the phone rang. It was Patsy sobbing and having difficulty getting her words out. Oh, Martine, Princess Diana's had the most dreadful accident. Put the telly on, tell me what's happening. There are constant updates, but the outlook was grim. Patsy, I've got an horrible feeling she's going to die, I told her. I'm coming straight back, she said. I'll see you in a few minutes. I was glued to the screen. Patsy arrived about 10 minutes later. We were together when they broke the news that Princess Diana had died. We threw our arms around each other and burst into tears. The news was totally incomprehensible, let alone weird. Only hours earlier I'd been chatting with her one-time lover. The next day, Las Dunas was a place of silence. The whole resort seemed to be in shock. Patsy couldn't get her mind off Diana's sons William and Harry because she's got her own little boy. What are those boys going to do without her, she kept murmuring, half to herself. It was a horrible end to an otherwise fabulous holiday. When I got back to Britain, I headed straight to Bethnal Green. Mum had left John a few months earlier and with some financial help from me was running the Railway Tavern, a rickety old pub. She had met a nice new man called Alan Tomlin, who looked a bit like Sylvester Stallone meets Al Pacino. Dark, rugged, with heavy-lidded eyes, a strong nose and a good body. He was right down her street. Mum thought I'd got a nice tan, but I still felt dreadful. I felt lethargic, utterly devoid of energy. I couldn't really keep awake. My belly had started to swell a little and my chin too. I thought I might have reacted badly to the flight, even though we were only in the air for a couple of hours. Regardless, the following day was EastEnders and I was determined to be there, bright as a button. Barbara Windsor clocked there was something wrong with me immediately as we did our first scenes together. Martine, something's happening to you. Your face is swelling up here right in front of me, love. Are you feeling okay? I didn't see any point in lying. Actually, I feel a bit sick. Everyone stop filming, Barbara ordered sternly. Something's wrong with this girl. Look at her. I did look bad, yellow-tinged and horribly swollen. You better get to the doctor's, darling. I was taken to see the local GP in Elstree, who thought I'd gone down with tonsillitis. He gave me antibiotics, I was put in a car and sent home. Once inside, I collapsed and fell into a deep sleep. I couldn't get up the next day and went back to sleep in my clothes. I woke up not knowing what day it was when my doorbell rang. A car to take me to Elstree. I grabbed my antibiotics and jumped in feeling queasy. The pills weren't helping because not long after swallowing one, I felt like I was going to... Stop the car, I told the driver. Pull over, I need to be sick. We were on the Edgware Road heading north. The driver pulled in at a petrol station. Christ, you don't look at all well, love. I didn't hear what else he had to say, as my head was outside the car window and I was violently ill. I pulled my head back inside the car and passed out. The driver grabbed my mobile, found Mum's number and told her what had happened. An hour or so later, I was sitting opposite Dr. Ryan at his practice in Wimpole Street. You're a very poorly girl, he said. You have to get some rest. He patiently explained how my immune system had collapsed over a period of time, dating back to when I contracted pneumonia. I'd never given my body a chance to regain its strength. Instead, I'd kept pushing it until something had to give. You could be feeling like this for about 18 months, he went on. You've just got to get used to it. That was August. Scripts were hastily rewritten. Tiffany was suddenly diagnosed with chickenpox. If anyone in the Vic asked where Tiff was, Grant or Peggy would say, she's upstairs feeling poorly. Another shock was in store when I was up for the Best Actress Award at the National TV Awards in October. I didn't have the energy to go downstairs and get some fresh air. Even lifting the TV remote control left me knackered. Mum had to literally carry me to the toilet. I just slept all the time, catching up on all the late nights, all the work, all the illnesses, all the pain, all the upsets of the past 18 months. I had to sleep and recharge all my batteries because not once during all that time had I stopped for even 1 minute. Towards the end of September, I started to feel more like my old self, and Dr. Ryan confirmed that I could go to the awards but not stay long and only have 1 glass of champagne. October arrived and I felt well enough to venture out with Mum for a trip to Harrods to find a couple of frocks for the big night. I decided she should come as my special guest. I settled on a gorgeous black dress with a black velvet basque and a big net skirt. As the awards, hosted by ITN's Trevor McDonald, went on, all I could think was, come on, hurry up, hurry up. When it finally came to my nomination, I started praying that the organisers had chosen a good clip of Tiff in action, as if they chose a bad one, it makes you think, no wonder nobody voted for me. My head started going 100 miles per hour, arguing with myself, "You've got it, girl, you've got it," followed by, "No, you haven't, no, you haven't." As all this was going on, I heard Leslie Grantham read the winner's name. And the winner is... Yeah, Martine McCutcheon! I got up and floated onto the stage. The best actress on British television. Who would have thought it? And then it was back to work. My body was still messed up. I was swollen almost everywhere. I didn't feel very good about myself physically, but that was counterbalanced by having a bit of get up and go again. As a performer, living my life in the public eye, you have to rely on your emotions and your state of mind. I've learned that to preserve both, I must stop myself giving 110% to every job. There's nothing wrong with putting yourself first, providing you don't hurt anyone. It's all karma. What you give out in this life, you get back in this life. That said, I found living in Tiffany's shadow was playing havoc with my mind. I felt people viewed me as an imposter. They didn't want Martine, they wanted Tiff, with her sharp one-liners and gutsy determination to survive whatever was thrown at her.